Hello everybody, here we are today continuing on with our CFL season previews, and we're going to be covering the Edmonton Elks. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the CFL, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season continued to be another bad year for Edmonton as they started off the year really poorly, which we'll talk about that a little bit later, but they were able to finish 4-14. They missed the playoffs yet again, and things I guess in the second half of the year were better in some ways, but yeah, not a year that they're happy about. So 2024 is a year things change. This time it's different, we swear. But anyway, we're going to be kicking it off with storylines. So what exactly are some storylines to focus on for this team? So first thing is, can special teams play be better? So last year, Dean Faithful was a kicker, and he ended up getting released by Edmonton recently and then signed like a day or two later, re-signed I should say, so that's kind of weird. But Faithful was part of this special teams play where things weren't perfect. They had the lowest field goal percentage in the league, and also out of all the teams in the league, they were the only team to not have 40 field goals for the year. They had 23. Big thing here with Dean Faithful is he's not really a guy you would expect to go out there and get a lot of long kicks, especially I think in the early part of the year. They weren't really trusting him past 40 yards. He didn't have a crazy amount of attempts. He might not have had any attempts that he made past 50 yards or more. So that's kind of an issue when you don't have a kicker you can trust, especially when you need to kick the ball and attempt a field goal, because you don't want to have to go out there and say, well guys, we're not going to come away with any points probably because our kicker can't make that. Now, they ended up signing Boris Beatty, and Beatty is somebody that has seen a lot of success in Montreal, in Toronto, and has been somebody that will have a high field goal percentage, while at times also being able to kick the ball from deep. 50-plus yard field goals can happen with Boris, and you are hoping, if you're Edmonton, he kind of alleviates things in terms of the kicking game. Now you can go out there and say, 53-yard field goal, maybe he can hit it, and by the end of the year, in that situation, if Edmonton is significantly better and they are approaching maybe the playoffs, if things got really, really crazy, they would have that comfort knowing, hey, we have a kicking game that is going to be able to benefit us and maybe even get a game-winning field goal for us if we really need it, whether that is the regular season to clinch a playoff spot or to be able to advance in the playoffs. Again, that is very wishful thinking, mind you. As for the return game, things were kind of lacking here for Edmonton, especially on punt return. They were nearly tied with Hamilton for the worst punt return average and things of that nature, but they ended up going out there and getting Javon Leake, as it was kind of just a poaching of former Toronto players. They got Curly Gittens Jr., they got McLeod Bethel-Thompson, they got Boris Beatty, they got Javon Leake. I'm sure there's more names we could talk about here, but yeah, with all this, you were seeing Javon Leake, who was the most outstanding special teams player last year. He, I believe, had 4 return touchdowns last year. They could be very big, and I don't want to be dramatic, but let's say there's a game where Dean Faithful last year would go 0 for 2, and then Edmonton has bad punt return, something along that line. So let's say that this year, Boris ends up hitting both of those field goals, and then Javon Leake gets a touchdown where instead maybe they would go out there and punt the ball. That right there is 13 potential points that you would have that you wouldn't have had the season prior. I'm not saying that's even going to happen in one game. Maybe Boris goes out there and struggles. Maybe we don't see any returns from Javon Leake, because it's not just the returner, it's about the return game in terms of how the guys are going to block for you and things like that. Trust me, blocking on punt return is difficult, especially if you are a gunner out wide, because you never know how they're going to position themselves, and you have to be worried about, not, having a dirty shot on a player that isn't watching you and all that. So again, this is just more of a broad spectrum thing. Is will the special teams get better? I think yes. The second talking point is whether or not the Elks have their quarterback situation figured out. Now, in recent years, the quarterback play from Elks quarterbacks, that's not even grammatically correct, at least it doesn't feel like it, has been atrocious. You have seen guys go out there and have really bad games. You are certainly not going to go out there and say, yeah, I think today we could go out there and see a quarterback have 400 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and that would be the norm. Instead, you're thinking, boy, if we could get 250 passing yards and no interceptions on the day, that would be a really good time. But now I think Edmonton might actually be in a really good spot, as you are seeing McLeod Bethel-Thompson go out there and probably be the starter, at least early on in the year. Yes, he was gone last season because he went to the USFL, but he was back. And while I'm not a huge fan of MBT in terms of being a top-tier quarterback, he's been able to go out there and be a winning quarterback. And that is something in Toronto that we saw with him. Joining a team in Edmonton that has not really had somebody that's been able to do that for a minute for them. Is he going to go out there and be a star? Not every game. In fact, some games could be really ugly, but you have the potential for him to go out there and have a 300-plus yard game. He's experienced, and you know that he's got that leadership aspect and has been on a cup-winning team. And then you have Trey Ford, who is a young quarterback that has got a lot of potential. I know that over the past 2 years, Chris Jones does not seem to be in love with giving him playing time, but he has shown flashes before, and is somebody that could give you a spark, and is somebody that is still learning. Will he turn out to be a franchise quarterback? I can't go out there and say that definitively, but you are in a spot where you have a veteran quarterback that's been able to be a winner, that could have big games, and then a young quarterback that's been able to learn and have flashes and potential. That is not necessarily a bad thing, as again, we're seeing teams like Calgary, we're seeing teams like Ottawa, that are going to have QB depth that might be better than some other teams, as every year it seems like some teams are just kind of in a carousel where they'll have a good quarterback situation, then a bad quarterback situation. This is not perfect by any means. I think you could go out there, have McLeod Bethel-Thompson have a bad game, say, okay, Trey, you go out there and try to play him, have a bad game too, and then things don't work out either way. But I do think in moments this year, you could put in either one of these quarterbacks and things could go well for them as this offense tries to be better. And I know that there's a whole talking point of, oh, two guys competing for one job is going to be just very bad, as you have Jones kind of saying, oh yeah, here's all this money, MVT, you can be our guy, and then possibly have Ford say, well, that is ridiculous. But it seems like McLeod Bethel-Thompson is going to try to be a leader, said that he's all about helping out the team and helping Trey learn. So as long as both of these guys have a good attitude heading into the season and are able to, again, keep things, civil, especially inside the locker room, that's going to be big. And I do think that Edmonton should be in a better spot compared to when they had some other quarterbacks that were not good. So the third and final talking point is whether or not Edmonton is going to be able to capture some of that magic they had in the second half of the season. So the first half of 2023 was abysmal for the Elks, as they ended up going 0-9. Two of those losses were where they were shut out, and then 4 of those were by 10 points or more. However, the second half of the season, they ended up going 4-5. Really, it was weeks 10 through 14 where they ended up going 4-1, where things looked good for them. However, the final 4 or 5 games of the year, they ended up losing all those. Will be the final 4 as they played Toronto, Montreal, BC, and Winnipeg. We are kind of seeing a trend there where they ended up losing those final games. Teams that were really good, the 4 best teams in the league: Toronto 16-2, Winnipeg 14-4, Montreal the Grey Cup champions, BC being a 12-6 team that made it to the Western Conference Final back-to-back years. Seems like Edmonton at the moment is not there or anywhere close to being a top-tier team. Shocker, I know, for a team that was getting shut out multiple times and was, 4-14 multiple years and has not posted a winning record in a long time. But maybe they can go out there and be that 4-1 team that was beating teams that were on their level. They may not go out there and even be a playoff team. But if they went like 6-10, 7-11 especially, I think fans would be very, very happy with that, as this team has not really been worth being excited about for a minute. And yeah, just the 2023 kind of felt like rock bottom, especially that first half, as the whole period post 2020 has not been good for this franchise. Things continue to go downhill, but I think after I said it last year, this year really feels like it could be a little bit better for them. So overall, what are my thoughts on the Edmonton Elks? This team should win more than 4 games this season. I do think that they should be able to do that, but I don't see them being a playoff team just yet. That is going to be a hard ask, and I'm going to have to go out there and see it before next season. I would be able to give them some credit. And they've lost some pieces as well. You saw them trade Jake Soresna with the whole Curly Gittins Jr. deal, and then AC Leonard is gone too. Just kind of curious to see how this team will gel, as they are getting a lot of pieces, and you have an opportunity to be able to take the next step into getting this rebuild kind of turned around. But I do think if things turn in the locker room, especially with Jones being there, this could continue to be a bad year. And at that point, you're thinking, what do we do to get this franchise out of the gutter? Because again, for a very long time, this was one of those franchises that you would say is the model of the league. Great attendance, great success, not only just regular season success, but winning multiple championships. That period, I guess, those days are over, but you have to be able to start from somewhere. 2024 may not be the year where they go out and win the Grey Cup, may be 4 or 5 years away from now. But it could be where they say, we bring in some fans, we get them excited again about this team, about football, and that could be that. So will this be a season where they're going to say, yeah, we remember this as being one of the best in franchise history? No, but I'm hoping at the very least that they go out there and are competing, and maybe, just maybe, if they went 9-9, I would be so happy for them. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Edmonton Elks for this season? Let me know down below in the comments. And like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. This will be like the 4th or 5th video going out today, as I just had a lot of stuff going against me in terms of being busy and my personal life away from this. But anyway, yeah, everybody please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe and have a great night.